Welcome back to Life's Children. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Pinchas. And Parshat Pinchas teaches us the importance of educating ourselves and being able to advocate for ourselves. So Parshat Pinchas, a lot of the Parsha focuses on a census taking of the Jewish people. So the Jewish people were preparing to enter the land of Canaan, now the land of Israel, and it was going to be divided up by tribes. Each tribe was going to get a portion of land depending on the number of people in their tribes. So those with greater populations would have bigger chunks of land, and those with smaller populations would have smaller chunks of land proportionately. And so the census is taken, and it's taken of all of the men who are over the age of 20 years old. So it doesn't include the children, and it doesn't include the women. And they take this census, and therefore they are able to decide how to divide up the land. And that is where we learn about the daughters of Self-Advocacy. So again, all men are mentioned here. It tells us who the leaders were, all of the tribes and all of those things. But then we get to learn about a descendant of Joseph's family from the tribe of Manasseh. So the tribe of Joseph, but is split up by his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And we are learning about Self-Advocacy's daughters, who Self-Advocacy was a descendant from Manasseh. And the Torah tells us this. It says, Self-Advocacy, son of Hefer, had no sons, only daughters, and the names of Self-Advocacy's daughters were Malha, Noah, Hogla, and Tirzah. And so it's very interesting that, again, among all of these men, these are the only women mentioned. And in addition, after that, they mentioned that Asher had a daughter named Sarah. So in the entire census taking, there are only 5 women mentioned among all of these men who are leaders and who are going to inherit land in Canaan. And so they are mentioned again when it says that the women, it says, quote, that they stood before Moses, before Eleazar the Kohen, and before the leaders of the entire assembly at the entrance of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the wilderness, but he was not among the assembly that was gathering against Hashem in the assembly of Korach, but he died of his own sins, and he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be omitted from among his family because he had no sons? Give us a possession among our father's brothers. And Moses brought their claim before Hashem. So essentially they came to Moses in the assembly and Eleazar the Kohen, and they said that, again, that their father had been a righteous man, in essence, that he wasn't part of this rebellion that rose up against Korach, saying that Moses and Aaron shouldn't have been in charge, that they took too much power for themselves. And they said our father wasn't among those rebels, but he died of his own sins, kind of natural causes. And they are saying, like, he died, he has no sons, but our father was a good man, and there is no reason that he shouldn't be able to inherit land in Canaan just because he has no sons, so let us take on the land for him. And Moses didn't know what to respond, so he went to God. Hashem said to Moses, The daughters of Self-Advocacy speak properly. You shall surely give them a possession of inheritance among the brothers of their father, and you shall cause the inheritance of their father to pass over them. And to the children of Israel you shall speak, saying, If a man will die and he has no sons, you shall cause his inheritance to pass over to his daughter. And then it ends by saying, This shall be for the children of Israel as a decree of justice, as Hashem commanded Moses. So very interesting, because here they are setting the precedent for future generations, not only for that they themselves are going to be allowed to inherit land as women, but that all future generations, if a man died and had no sons, that they would be allowed to inherit land. This is huge. Think about in so many countries around the world where women weren't allowed to own land, where they weren't allowed to inherit, where it had to be in the men who inherited. This was revolutionary for its time, that women were going to be allowed to inherit land. And so that is why Self-Advocacy's daughters are mentioned earlier among sort of the inheritors, because they got a possession of the land of Israel. So they came to Moses and to Eleazar respectfully, but they had done their research, they had educated themselves, they knew who was allowed to inherit the land, and then they presented their case to Moses and Eleazar saying, hey, we're going to advocate for ourselves. We should have a portion of land because our father was a good man. And they persuaded Moses, in essence, because God heard their claim and thought that it was good. And God made this a decree for future generations, again, setting the precedent for future women. And the commentator Ramban, he suggests that the reason that Sarah, the other woman in this Parsha, was mentioned was that because she too inherited land, because her mother had been the sole sort of heir of her father who had no sons, that Sarah also was one who inherited land. And so now we already see that the precedent that the daughters of Self-Advocacy set was already serving someone, Sarah, in this week's Parsha. And so what we can see from this, what we can learn from this Parsha, from the daughters of Self-Advocacy, is the importance of being able to educate ourselves, to become knowledgeable in a subject matter as it pertains to ourselves, and then to be able to speak up for ourselves, to advocate for ourselves, and therefore on behalf of others. Because so often, when we think about advocacy a lot these days, at least when it comes to self-advocacy, we think about it in the medical field. Like, okay, if you're having a problem, you have to be able to do your research and to bring it to your doctor and to present it and to have a discussion with them and to be knowledgeable about the topic that you are going to talk to them about so that you can be in the best position possible to support yourself. So that's just one example, but there are many instances in our lives where if we have the proper education and we take something respectfully, we are able to have a better outcome and a better future for ourselves than we would have had if we had stayed quiet or if we hadn't been knowledgeable about the subject matter that pertains to us specifically. And again, in the case of the daughters of Self-Advocacy, they not only made their lives better, but they made the lives of women better for many future generations. And so I think that this is a very beautiful and powerful lesson we can learn from this week's Parsha. I wish you all a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.